In this video, you'll discover the origins of Ichiban Kasuga and how he became the next hero in the Yakuza franchise, what considerations were made when making Like a Dragon into an RPG, and the lead writer's thoughts on Ichiban in the future. I'm Chill, and these are the selected excerpts from the Verge interview with Masayoshi Yokoyama. Link to the full article below. Masayoshi Yokoyama is Sega's chief producer and writer on the Yakuza series, and to get started, the interviewer asked, how involved were you with the character creation process? What were the principles for the character you kept in mind when writing for him? Masayoshi said, basically, I've been in charge of the character settings, such as personalities, speech mannerisms, and the backbone of their action principles for the main characters that appear in the main story since the first game. The character Ichiban Kasuga was originally born during development of Ryoga Gotoku Online, which is a mobile app title being serviced in Japan. At the time we finished development of Yakuza 6, we were ideating on a new protagonist to take Kiryu's place. That's when we decided on taking apart the indestructible hero image and creating a more real-world hero. Kazuma Kiryu's personality is representative of characters that appear in Ningyo films, which is a genre of Japanese mafia films that have been around from back in the day. He is generally reserved, stoic, and self-sacrificing, but stronger than anybody and prefers to act alone. In a way, his character embodies qualities that Japanese boys and men would look up to. Kasuga, on the other hand, was created with the intention of being more relatable rather than admired. I wanted to create a character whose words and actions would emotionally move us and someone you'd want to cheer for and fight alongside. Since the aforementioned Ryoga Gotoku Online was a card battle game in which players formed decks with their friends to fight against enemies, I wanted to depict the strength of a leader rather than the strength of an individual, which became the origin of my idea. After that, I compiled all of Ichiban Kasuga's origin and life story into a document and presented to an executive director, Toshihiro Nagoshi, and my team members. This led to talks of potentially using the character for the next console game, and then eventually became official for Yakuza Like a Dragon. Was there a conscious effort to make him different to Kiryu? What do you think the two characters have in common? For those that have played both Yakuza and Yakuza Like a Dragon, you may have noticed that Kazuma Kiryu and Ichiban Kasuga lead a similar path. Both have had a difficult childhood without the love of their immediate family, then felt extreme gratitude and admiration for the ones that took care of them. Unable to suppress those emotions, both set out on the path of Yakuza. Right when they are about to become full-fledged Yakuza, they both go to prison for a crime neither committed. What awaited them after their long sentence was an unimaginably cruel reality. This general flow is exactly the same for both of them. However, just because the two characters' personalities differ so much, the same general plotline gives off a totally different feel for both. Upon release from prison, Kiryu goes straight to find his mentor, Kazama, while Kasuga also tries to find his mentor, Arakawa. Before he sets out to do so, he decides to clean himself a bit first and stops by the hair salon to get a botched perm. Both characters follow the same path, but vastly differ in their portrayal. I actually haven't had too much difficulty depicting each of the characters. For Yakuza Like a Dragon, I set out to write the story after fleshing out Ichiban Kasuga as a human being. So while writing, I even surprised myself at times how different these characters acted within very similar circumstances. Next, the interviewer asked, which came first, the idea to make Kasuga an RPG obsessive, or the decision to shift Like a Dragon to RPG-style turn-based combat? The decision to shift RPG came first. The character setting that Kasuga loves RPGs came after. As previously mentioned above, the concept was to create a new relatable hero, so we choose the most optimal game system, a party system, that would make Ichiban Kasuga's story interesting. We wouldn't have made the same decision for Kiryu, who fights only on his own. One of my beliefs in creating games is to value the core of play. This involves deciding what the game is supposed to entertain, and then assigning various components to the right places accordingly. The story is the core element of the Yakuza series. The game was made to enjoy the story, and the other elements, such as the city used as the setting, music, minigames, and battle action, are all there to elevate the story experience. For Yakuza Like a Dragon, the most optimal way for players to experience the story and show the battles of Ichiban Kasuga and his friends that gathered around him was the RPG style. So upon deciding the RPG genre, there were a few questions we had to address, such as, how will we make Kasuga relate to the hero job class? What is the logic behind the exchanges during these battles within Kasuga's mind? One way we addressed these was to make Kasuga an RPG enthusiast. Then the interviewer said, I don't know if this is the same for everyone, but Like a Dragon took me a lot longer to finish than other games in the series. This is probably because of the slower-paced combat, but did the longer running time affect your approach to story writing and pacing? Masayoshi said, "The volume and length of the story is actually not that different from the past games in the series, so it didn't affect the story writing and pacing all that much. We looked to the general volume of a 10-episode Japanese drama series when creating the Yakuza series. For this game, I think the reason the longer playtime was because of the shift to RPG requiring more time to level up. The accelerating battle tempo was something we worked on until the very end of development. We also continued to make adjustments to the time it takes to level up, but the game is designed so it will become difficult to beat the stronger bosses unless you change jobs and collect materials for better weapons. For those players that are playing this game in the same way you played through the past ones, it may feel a bit longer, but we went through this kind of balancing because we wanted players to discover the fun sights of the city instead of simply grinding to level up." The interviewer said, "The Yakuza series has a really unique blend of serious and lighthearted subject matter. How do you balance those aspects when writing and making sure everything feels appropriate for the series?" Masayoshi said, "As touched upon earlier, I think the greatest strength of our team is the narrative, game design, character design, animation, and sound creation staff all have a deep understanding of what the core is. The reason for this isn't simply how long we've known each other or how well we get along. I think that each and every staff member loves Ryogaga Toku, and I think that's the biggest reason. I personally am in charge of story writing and I'm also the chief producer and have a hand in ideating and executing some marketing and PR initiatives. But every decision I make is based on how to reflect the content of the game in any kind of promotion or campaign and how to make the game itself more interesting. All staff members that are involved with the game, including those working within the game and outside the game, such as the sales team, advertising team, marketing team, are working hard to increase the value of the game, so everyone's accumulated effort may be what creates this great balance. In a past game, someone on the advertising team even wrote and implemented an original story scenario for a real company that appeared in Kamurocho that he was the point person for, so you can see what kind of team Ryogaga Toku Studio is." The interviewer asked, "This is the first Yakuza game where you're accompanied by a party of characters for almost the entire running time, and they all have their own motivations. Was that a challenge compared to previous Yakuza games where the focus tends to be on the current protagonist?" Masayoshi said, "In the past, when creating games like Yakuza 0, which depicted the past of Yakuza, and other remake titles, I would dig deeper into the characters other than the protagonist, so this wasn't so much of a challenge for me. So attention, at this point I'm about to discuss story content for the rest of the Yakuza series and it might spoil things for you if you haven't finished Like a Dragon or played the other games, so please proceed with caution." The interviewer said, "I think Arakawa is probably the most pivotal character in the game. The intro does a good job of making him a sympathetic character before setting him up as the villain, and then he's revealed to have been on the Tojo clan's side all along, before meeting a tragic end. How early in the writing process was his role decided, and was he always intended to have an arc that spanned most of the game's story?" Masayoshi said this was something that was decided at the start of writing the first chapter. "When creating the intro of the game, my determination was that I'm going to depict the life of this man, Nasumi Arakawa, so the game started out on that scene." The interviewer said, "The Han Joon-gi twist was particularly unexpected for me given how he died in Yakuza 6. What was the thought behind sort of bringing him back as Kim Yeon-soo?" "This was actually something that was decided around the time of Ichiban Kasuga's story," Masayoshi said. "There wasn't too much deliberation behind this decision, but my personal thought was that if the Jingmyeon Mafia were to make an appearance, then Han Joon-gi has to be there too. In addition, I feel like the Jingmyeon Mafia would do something like that. Sorry for surprising you." The interviewer said, "Of course, the biggest reveal of the game is the return of Kiryu, although his role is quite minor. Were you planning from the beginning to include him in Like a Dragon, considering how Yakuza 6 seemingly drew a line under his storyline?" Masayoshi said, "This wasn't decided in the early stages of planning the story. When the main themes of the game were decided to be about the dualities of the front and back, the hypocrisy and justice, the superficiality and truth of Japanese society, I thought it would be impossible not to have him appear in the episode of the Underworld, so we decided he would make an appearance." The interviewer asked, "I have the same question for Goro Majima, who seems to appear in every Yakuza game to varying degrees now. In Like a Dragon, he's a difficult boss to fight but doesn't otherwise have a big role in the story. How did you approach his inclusion?" Masayoshi said, "The reason why we decided he'd make an appearance is the same for Kazuma Kiryu. However, the big difference is that we cut all ties to the past. The game is unwaveringly seen from Ichiban Kasuga's perspective, so we got rid of any information or connections that Kasuga had no need of knowing. This is the beginning of the tale of Ichiban Kasuga, not a continuation of the Kazuma Kiryu story. We wanted those players that started the series with Like a Dragon to have the same amount of knowledge and emotions as Kasuga when interacting with Majima and other characters from the past series, so we didn't include any unnecessarily deep interactions. The interviewer said, "I'm sure that you can't say anything specific about potential future games, but I thought it was interesting how Like a Dragon finished on an open-ended note, with Kasuga deciding that his friends are what's most important to him. Is there a direction you'd like to take the character in the future?" Masayoshi said, "I think that Yakuza Like a Dragon is only the first chapter in Ichiban Kasuga's life. Since he was imprisoned for 18 years and he has only just begun his life as an adult man, I'm sure there's probably many trials and tribulations that await him. Even Kazuma Kiryu, who is said to be the strongest, had his life turned upside down with his encounter with a little girl. As Kasuga starts out his new life, he will surely encounter challenges that he cannot solve through violence or brute force. I developed each game with the intention of creating a life of a single person, and not sure if I'll continue to write Ichiban Kasuga's life or not, but I could totally imagine him in deep trouble somewhere on the face of this earth." And that concludes the interview. Thanks for listening. I am a big Yakuza fan and I've been streaming the games on Twitch and YouTube, so if you ever want to watch or chat about the games, you can find me there or here. We've also recently opened a Discord where we discuss Yakuza and Yakuza-related media, so feel free to stop in. Please drop a like and or sub if inclined, and I'll see you later in Kamurocho.